Well, good afternoon everyone. We're on my plot once again. This is the 2020 edition and we've been doing it a few years now. We start with the new varieties, as you'll remember, and then go right through the plot seeing what I've grown this year and how the timing went and what they're like. And then I'll finish off with a little bit on timing dahlias. And as you go through the plot, I'll explain what I try to achieve when I time them. Okay, we're going to start along the first row then, and the first one on is Rycroft Wizard from Phil Godsmark. It's a yellow miniature ball, good form, good size. I know it's on trial at a nursery and it may come on to release next year. I've grown it 9 blooms on a plant. They go through the miniature ring comfortably, so they're easily a miniature. There's no blooms oversized, even this blown bloom here goes through the ring. So it can be grown 8 to 9 up, I would say, for most people. Tall grower. They do grow taller here than most people's, and this would be 5 foot in height. The next one on is from the same razor. It's called Gold. It's called Rycroft Gold, a small deck, a bit smaller than some small decks, and you would need to grow it about 7 up to get top size, which I have, and that's the size I'm getting in the trials, and even that is on the miniature ring, and it's a small deck, and grown 5 up, doesn't need covering, takes the weather well, as does the other one, and they're the first 2 from Phil Godsmark. We've got 2 now from Les Stothard, and this is a particularly good bloom of it, and it's called Blyton Gold Star. It's a yellow small ball, definitely a small ball. As you can see, the ring just sits on it, so it's a small ball. This is the miniature ring. The thing that worries me about this variety is the percentage of clock face blooms, meaning the bloom is not at a 45-degree angle as is required. So many of them are clock face, like a clock on a wall, and I suppose out of 27 blooms there's probably 20 of them that wouldn't be an acceptable angle. Whether it's the season, I don't know, but it's a lovely bloom if you could get it like that, but it's a risk at the moment where you're getting so many that you couldn't show. Moving on to his other variety, which is Royal Gala, Blyton Royal Gala from Les Stothard again. Afraid this is a Miss Les. There's so many distorted blooms, in fact you could play rugby with that one, and they are a bit lumpy, they are a bit heavy. It's just going through the miniature ring, but only just, but more like a small deck formation really. Again, grown 9 up because they both come as miniatures, and I've got 3 plants of the red one and 3 plants of Gold Star. So I don't think there's a star amongst them really this year of Les's. He normally gives me some good varieties. This was one from Australia. A tuber was sent to me by Dennis Seatsman and Steve Cox in America, and it's got beautiful form. It's very low growing. I just got the tuber and propagated it. But I will give it another go because it's straight cactus, goes back on the stem, and I'll have another look at that. I picked it out from one of Dennis's exhibits which he posted online, and it looked really good. And it's called Glenmark Charmaine, small cactus, from Dennis Seatsman in Australia. Okay, we're going to go down the next row now, and if you can come in for this one, Dave, and have a look at this giant semi-cactus. This is the one with the best centre of the 3 that I've got out. It's AC Pillow from Ken Greenaway in America. It's an absolutely gorgeous colour and good form as well. It would want to be a little bit bigger for a giant semi-cactus, but a pretty dahlia just the same. And then we're crossing continents now to Australia, and John Menzel in Australia, and this is one of his raisins, and it's called Winky Pat. And to see the front of this bloom, it's another one that's got a lot of clock face blooms if you look at it, and that is probably the best bloom on there. I don't know if it would be good enough in the small deck section for our shows. It is a small deck, it won't go through the miniature ring. It's called Winky Pat from John Menzel. And this little one down here, you might think it's a bit of a runt, but actually the blooms are quite nice. It's a large semi-cactus. It's called Bloomquist John F. And it's quite a pleasant variety, maybe a little bit streaky, but it's a large, but the plants are certainly not large. They're 2.5 foot. And that will be the problem, really. It's just too short for what we expect and what we want. But I've grown it 5 blooms on a plant, and they're 5 quite nice blooms. And that's Bloomquist John F. I will say that the standard of the new varieties this year is a little bit down on the standard that I normally get and expect. This is another AC variety. This is AC Lavender. I saw a picture of it and it reminded me of one we grew from Ireland a few years back, and it was called Stellene Condessa, and it looked very much like that, but I haven't got it out, and it's looked, and what I have got, usually from the foreign varieties, no offence to the Americans, but a lot of these varieties that I'm getting in are not that healthy. This has looked dubious for health all the way through, but I've left it in and hoping it'll clean up. But they don't all clean up, as you'll see in a minute. This is called Tahoma Sure Thing. Well, it's certainly not a sure thing. It's open centred, it's dwarfed. Raymond Duffy Tewksbury, he's got a plant and it's 3.5 foot with lovely blooms on it, but not mine. He gave me the plant, and it comes from America. Tahoma is, I think, Les Connell, and no, it's a miss, I'm afraid. I have had one good bloom off of the new lighter cord, and this is it, but I've also got a few clock face blooms. I've got 2 plants. This is the other plant, and that's got a mouth organ centre. The bloom I cut and took to Essex on Sunday was a good bloom, but I'll have to rogue the stock a bit. I've got a bit of stock of it. This came over, it's called AC MP, and it came as a small cactus. I didn't get enough breaks on it. Should have had 12 up, but I had 7 up. But quite frankly, I don't think it would make it as a medium, and I don't think it would make it as a small. But other people are growing it, and they're growing it 12 or so up, and maybe they get it as a... But when you look at the centre for a small cactus,
big green centres,
yeah, an elongated centres is a variation of, you know, just at the moment you would say it's a miss. But I'll have a second flush, and we'll have another look another time. This is a good dahlia. I haven't got a perfect one to show you this time, but I showed it last year, and it is really a good dahlia. It's one of the stars. It's Clearview Claret. It's a medium semi-cactus from the Parcels in Washington State, and it's a really good medium semi-cactus. But I haven't got a perfect bloom today. I've got some coming. I've got a couple that are gone. I grew it 7 up, and it's a variety that I've always liked. I've grown it 2 years now, and going side to side. And this is a variety I grew last year. It's Porcelain. It's Rycroft Porcelain. I grew 12 blooms on a plant last year to try and get it as a miniature, and they were all on the ring. So I've tried to get it as a small this year, and it's pretty much made it as a small. That's it wouldn't go through a medium miniature ring, that, so it's 4 3/4 inches, and it's a wonderful dahlia. You imagine 5 of that in a vase. It's a lovely thing, and it's called Rycroft Porcelain from Phil Godsmark down in Sussex in England, and this is also his. It's 2nd year seedling. He never does that. He always sends old dahlias that he's had 2, 3, 4 years, which are tried and tested varieties. But he fell in love with this this medium deck when it flowered on his nursery as a 1st year seedling. Marked it and sent me a plant of it, just the one plant, and so far I really like that. It's not going to be big. It's going to be about a 7.5, 8 inch medium. He told me to grow it 5 up, and I have, but I've got high hopes of that. I fancy that, and all things being equal, I'll grow a few of that next year. But there's only the one plant, there's only be the one tuber, and let's hope it's a good one. And on to the one that they're all talking about. This is the latest Diane Sport from Robin Moyser from Maidstone in Kent, and it's a small decorative. It's white with a lavender flush, and he showed a couple of lovely vases at in his championship. He had a vase last Sunday which he won, and I've got 3 plants. So the ones that I think might be good, I put 3 plants in this year because I didn't have as many varieties as normal. And ones that I've grown before, like porcelain, just the 1 plant, because I knew what it was going to be like. It's just a case of what sort of size bloom I could achieve, and I'm quite happy with the bloom of porcelain. But this is Tracy Diane, and I've got all the blooms. Most of the blooms open now, but having 3 plants, you know, I doubt if I'll get to show it, but you're getting to see it, and it's a really dahlia of the future. I'm very pretty with it, you know, it's a lovely thing. Okay. And unfortunately, this is my 2nd year with Demelza, Polventon Demelza. I grew it 9 up, like the Razor said. Cyril Watkins told me to grow it 9 up, and I did. And it was a bit small last year, so I thought, oh, 7 up. But it's still a bit small for the miniature classes. I mean, that's a bigger bloom. But if you put that against some of the miniatures like Polventon Cristobal, Blighton Stella, Marston George, it would appear to be too small. I don't know how much lower you can go on a miniature from 7. I've never grown a miniature less than 7, and it might never come on the market. And the same thing applies to a Marston Amanda from the late John Digweed. It's a pretty little thing, but are there better miniatures than that around? The answer is yes. Have a look at the, you know, the makeup of it. It doesn't float your boat, does it?
No.
And this floats my boat though, and it did last year, and it has again this year. It's too tall, obviously. You couldn't cover it. It's a 6-foot dahlia. It's called Marston Patsy, and I've always liked it. I liked it last year. I liked it again this year, and you know what? I'm probably going to have a little bed of it next year. It's called Marston Patsy. There are no really good yellow miniature decks because Barbary Primrose Hall, which was being shown as a miniature deck up till this year, is now a miniature ball. So it leaves that section bereft of a yellow miniature deck. So, and that is a deck. Even David Bates would have to agree that that was a deck, and it's a good deck, isn't it? Do you like it? The actual bloom.
Yeah.
It'd be a pain in the butt.
It's just popped, I think.
The height, yes, just blown. But
you need a step ladder to cut a vase.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll get you round, and you can pick me blooms out when you give up grown giants. Right, we're going to go to Hackett Spirit, which I grew last year, and grown it again, and it's a pleasant one, isn't it? Pretty little dahlia.
Very fine petaled, isn't it?
Yeah, very finely quilled petals. That comes from Hasselhofer in Austria, Peter Hasselhofer in Austria. Just the 1 plant because I've grown it before. Just the 1 plant of Demelza, I've grown it before. Just the 1 plant of Amanda, I've grown it before. Just the 1 plant of Patsy before, because I've grown it before. And this one, I've got 1 plant because Robert Reed, who sent me the plant, only sent me 1 plant, so I planted it. And it's called Linzer, I can't remember the name, Linzer Kleinhof. Linzer Kleinhof from Germany. He brought it off of Hasselhofer, I think, and it's quite a nice water lily. The thing I worry about, they're just going soft a little bit at the back, and it's quite a young bloom, isn't it? So
yeah.
You worry about that. Behind us we've got Crystal, Happy Crystal, which is a Fim, medium-sized Fim, and I grew it last year, so there's only 1 plant, and it's quite a nice Fim, isn't it? Quite pleasant. Grown them 7 up. If I don't know much about them, I just grow a Fim like 7 up. This is my favourite Fim, which is Winky Volcano, which at last year's National it was chosen as the best overseas dahlia in show, and it was raised by John Menzel from the town village he lives in. He's Winky. I've been to his house, and it's called Winky Volcano. It's from John Menzel. This one here is Twilight Boy. This was my spare plant. I was planning to grow a full bed of it, but I never got there. And I planted the ones that were there, and then I had this plant that came late. So there aren't enough blooms on it for what I was hoping for, but it's a lovely dahlia. It's a real, you'll see my main plants a bit later, but this is a winner. There was talk of it being a ball, but they want to put that bloke up in a straitjacket, because that'd never be a ball in a million years, will it? Look at it. That's a deck and a deck and a deck. Yep, no doubt about it. And the one next to it is one that we'll be taking on, if it's ever released. We'll take on the Dianes. I've grown it 7 up. Brian Madders from the New Forest is a raiser, and I said, how should I grow it? And he said, grow it like it's a Diane. And I grow the Diane 7 up, so I grew this 7 up. I'd probably go to 6 if I was growing it again, because you could do with a little bit more meat in it, couldn't you, really? But it looked awful, I have to say. It looked awful as a plant early on. I've got 2 plants of it, another one over the way, and it didn't look well early on, but it seemed to grow through it, and it looks well enough now. And that is called Forest Lamplight, because he lives, Brian Madders lives near the New Forest in Hampshire in England, and he called it Forest Lamplight. That's Brian Madders. Behind us, yeah, we're trying to forget this one. I was going to pull them up so you wouldn't see it, but Raymond Duffy assured me it's low and then it shoots up. Well, I'm still waiting for the shooting up to occur, and the only place that's going to go is on the composting. So that is called Happy Frills. It's a Fim, but it's got a problem, and it goes where most of my problems go, in the wheelie bin. One plant, because I've grown it again, of Westerton Pearl, which is probably one of the best miniature ball of the present time. Small ball of the present time, and is raised by Gordon Hodgson up in the north east, and a lot of people are growing that this year. A few lads had nice vases on Sunday of it. Some of the Right, so we're still waiting on Winky Raven. Some of these plants were a bit late when I got them, and Winky Raven, you've got to forgive me disbudding. I've got hands that won't stop disbudding. I keep telling them off. But that's Winky Raven. It's a small deck and it's dark red, and that's yet to come. This is from America. It's called Snowcap, Clearview Snowcap from the Parcels in America. It's got the size of a giant semi-cactus, but again it's got this swirly sort of form, and for English and American judging, and Australian for that matter, it wouldn't have the form to take on a Jupiter or Janoami, which are our number 1 and number 2 varieties. So that would be a miss. One plant of Millie again. I grew Millie last year, 2 plants. I took it down to 1. There's a couple of blown blooms there, but these 2 are going to be nice blooms, and it is a good large deck. It's ivory coloured with a lavender flush. It's called Millie, and it was raised by Gabby Hayes in the Midlands. My man here, who's grown all giants this year, snuck me a couple of plants of giants, and so did Robert Reed. Helped me out in the giants, because I don't get many giants to grow, and I like to, just to have a look at them. And this is called Wynn's Neon Dream. It's a young bloom, and I'm getting a lot of marking at the moment with this damp weather. You can see that bloom there. Yeah. I don't normally suffer a lot from marking, but it's a young bloom, isn't it? There's a ton to come in the middle, yet the back's gone, so there is a lot of moisture about in the air this year.
Done the
no, Jonas. This is called Clearview Jonas. I grew these, you've got 3, 3 and 3, 4 threes along here, because I was going to have a little go at the Silver Hill Shield at the National. So what you've got are 3 Clearview Jonas, 3 Louis White, 3 Eastwood Bard, what did I say?
Louis White.
Louis Berger, and 2 Newfield Sharpie. So I was trying to get at least 1 bloom off of each of these varieties to go with my Challenger and Accord to get the 6 blooms, because you need 4 varieties for the Silver Hill at the Wisley show, and that's why I've grown 3, 3, 3 and 2. But this is a good bloom of it. This is called Jonas, Clearview Jonas, and it's a large semi-cactus. I grew it not knowing what it was last year, and all the blooms are up near the large ring, so I've grown it as a large semi-cactus here. That is Clearview Jonas from the Parcels. And then you've got Louis Berger, which is a proper large semi-cactus, no doubt about that. You don't have to push it. You can grow it 5 up and you get blooms like that, and it's a lovely bloom. The only thing I'm noticing is that you are getting the marking, which it didn't do last year. It was clean as a whistle, and this is the cleanest bloom, and it's got days to go again. So without covers, this would be a dahlia that you would have to cover to get it onto the bench. Back to our giants then, we saw the Neon Dream, and we've also got the Alpine Glow, and I haven't had a good bloom of it. They are softening a bit at the back. So that's that. The best of the ones from America was Farmer John, Wynn's Farmer John, from Corey Wynn in America, and that's a nice bloom. It could do with being an inch bigger probably for the giant fanatics like our man, and but it's the best of the 3 by a mile for me. Is it the best of the 3 for you?
I'd say the Aspen Glow for me, but
yeah.
I think those don't look too healthy, your plants, but mine's a bit stronger.
Oh, right, yeah.
Probably about 2 foot taller than mine.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased with that. Louis White has done everything I expected, and I should have really taken, I didn't realise it was quite that clean, this bloom, but a lot of them are bashed together in the wind we had the week before, and I was a bit disheartened with them because I could have done a 3 pretty much. But this one was unmarked, and I could have took this on Sunday if I'd been more interested in it. But
what about Bard?
Yeah, Eastwood Bard. I've grown it as a large this year, 4 up, but it hasn't made the size. And as Dave said earlier, it would make a reasonable medium, but difficult to get to the size. They all go through the ring. I've got a medium ring here just to show what I was expecting was it to be a large, but it's an inch off the medium ring, so it just hasn't got the size in it. But I thought last year, where it's a medium and a large, I thought this would probably make a large, but never did. Bit disappointed in me Eastwood Sharpie, me what's it called, Newfield Sharpie. One virus plant, open centred. The other one isn't all that healthy, and it looks more decky. So I think the stock might be a bit suspect on that. And this one here is Habit Sunlight. If you come around this one, Dave, I'll stand back.
This is the one that you had as a large last year.
Yeah, grew some as a medium, some as a large, and I've done the same this year. There's more on that plant and 4 up on this plant. But again, you know, grown 4 up, you would expect it to be a little bit bigger, and it's still a medium. It's still, you know, 3/4 of an inch there. So maybe it would make its name, if it's going to make its name, as a medium. But would it be refined enough against like Westerton Harry and
no,
Mary Margaret Rowe? You
it's
know,
got a petal of a large, isn't it?
It has got them. That's why I'd sort of give it the gun and tried it at 4 up. Yes, we're once again, these are single plants. That's not the same variety. This is Western Sunset, and this is Western Gatehouse. Both come from Gordon Hodgson. This one is already on the market, Sunset, and is being shown and grown by a lot of the northern growers. I grow them 7 on a plant, 7 blooms on a plant, and it's a good workmanlike small deck from Gordon. And the other variety is one of his again, very similar in colour, a bit different in formation. It's called Westerton Gatehouse, and it's quite a bit bigger bloom sometimes, this than the other one, with a bigger centre. And that's Western Gatehouse from Gordon Hodgson.
Got a little bit of fading on that where you
Yeah.
haven't necessarily on the other
No. Well, you've got it.
bit on
Depends
there.
how old they are,
Yeah.
doesn't it, really? I think if they're younger blooms, see, this one's got such a big centre, it's going to take a long time to come out,
Yeah.
isn't it? The most colourful variety, this is the first time I've grown it. I know it's been grown in the trials up north, and it's called Clearview Cameron. And I don't know if it's a bicolour or a blend. It appears to be a bicolour, but I don't know how it's going to be classified. And it's a medium semi-cactus, and it comes from the Parcels in America, and it's a lovely dahlia. And this is one of the better dahlias on the plot. Robert Reed gave it to me. It's Happit Red Point, and it's a nice large pom. Goes through the ring easily, and I've seen a couple of good blooms. The only fault I found in it is when the face is right like that, sometimes it can die a bit and drop a bit in the back. You know, like that bloom is sort of you know, not past its sell by date. You know, you would put that on the bench, but you wouldn't put the bottom on the bench. So that would be my only criticism of it. But it whistles through the large pom ring easily.
Yeah.
So, you know, you would have no worries there about size. This is an 83mm ring, and all the dahlias, as you know, have to go through a ring except giants. And that is Happit Red Point from Hasselhofer in Austria. This is Barrow's Twilight, a bit like the Chloe Twilight, that Chloe B rather, that was
Colette
released
B.
earlier this year.
Colette.
Colette B.
Yeah.
And this is Barrow's Twilight. Probably needs stripping down a bit more than I've got it to get the size. But what you will notice that every bloom is of the one colour. There have been problems with Colette B where blooms have gone, some yellow blooms and whole plants going yellow. But I was given the 2 plants of this to grow, and every bloom is of a pale white. You can't really call it white. It's more
Like a
of
shelled pink, isn't it?
yeah,
Almost
very
pale.
faint shade of pink. And this is a sport of John's Twilight, and Colette B is a sport of Hollywood Twilight, and basically they're both the same dahlia, so you probably got a very similar sport, but it might hold the colour better. I don't know. 2 out of 2 and not a yellow bloom in sight is quite good. This is another large pom. It's called Happit. What's it called?
Piccolo.
Piccolo. Happit Piccolo. And the centre is the problem. I've been studying it for the last few days, and it's difficult to get a centre just right. It's sort of like that. That bloom is probably perfect from the point of view of the age of the bloom. Doesn't go right back on the stem, which is a fault for a pom. You can take these green bracts out, and that does help them to dress back, but it's also a faulty on its centre. So where I would say that this one, Red Point, has got a chance, then that one hasn't, because with Red Point, I know it's sort of falling to bits and going soft early, but it's a young bloom and it's back on the stem already. So it is a proper large pom. This was a bit of a disappointment from Tony Kingdom. It's called Sherwill Midnight, and I've got 3 plants of it because I don't get many giants, so when I do get a giant I tend to grow 3 so I can have a good look at them. But when you look at these centres and the shape of the bloom, and I've only got 9 blooms and there isn't a proper bloom amongst them, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is to come, 7, 8, 9. Pretty dreadful really. Tony, try better.
Let's try harder.
Yeah. And this one is Glenmark Endeavour. It's a yellow. It was good last year. Have you got yours out? Did you have yours out?
Yeah, we've got to start. They're not out, but
No,
halfway.
on their way. But I was quite pleased with it. It's quite nice, wasn't it, last year?
Yeah.
You liked it and I liked it. But there's a load to come, isn't there? You know, it's going to be a proper giant with all that to come.
It's going to be one. I think you need. You'll get a bloom in a number that will be right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the new varieties weren't as good as I was hoping this year. Probably the worst year I've had overall for new varieties. The amount of them and the quality of them. But there's one or two diamonds in there, like Tracy Diane and Happy Red Point and a few others. But we're hoping for better things next year. But it was an awkward time at that time when people were sending plants out and letting me have them. The virus had hit by then, and you know, it's a strange year. But we've done our best with them. We're going right down the plot now to show you what I've grown. I've grown 22 varieties. The minimum is a variety called Blighton Red Ace, where I've got 20 plants of it because it's a new one and I wanted to see what it was like. And the biggest planting I've got is 56 Winholm Diane, which has always been a banker for me, and the numbers are somewhere between those two figures, 20 and 56. Most of these beds hold 30 or 31, so when you see they're grown in double rows this year, 2 rows to a bed, there are 22 varieties and probably about 18 beds, because I've doubled up 3 or 4 times with 2 beds of a banker variety. So we're going to have a stroll down, and the first one is Rycroft Misty. There's 1 or 2 plants of other varieties in there, but it's basically a bed of Rycroft Misty. And Rycroft Misty is a lovely dahlia, hard as nails, never mark up on you, been grown outside, but you do get a degree of colour variance, and you've got to work hard to get 5 the same colour in it. It's not very big. It's an 8-up job for me, 8 blooms to a plant, and strip pretty much down the stem to try and get it near the miniature ring. And this is nowhere near the miniature ring, but it's probably about as big as you'll get Rycroft Misty. But this one here is Rycroft Marksman, which is also a new variety, and that is a bigger variety, naturally bigger. And it's a ball dahlia, whereas Misty is a miniature deck. Marksman is a miniature ball. I've got 3 plants of Marksman in here and a couple of Barbary Star, which I think is Barbary Star. But this is a good variety, and never been released, never come on the market, but it still may do. So we've got 30 plants in there. My only medium decorative is Western Harry. Everything you'll see here grows very tall for me. This is a 6-foot variety, and it can take the weather well. The only time it will get hammered is if you have hailstones, and what they do is the hailstones will split the petal when it meets the face of the bloom. But it's a dahlia that does very well for me, and as I say, the timing is, we're going to go through timing at the end for 5 minutes and talk about it, but the idea is as we pan down these 22 beds is, I've done my first show on Sunday, got another one next Saturday, and then the final one is the following Thursday. So I've tried to create a flush starting just before the first show and ending sometime after the last show, and that's what I do every year, but I normally do 7 shows each year. This year there are only 3 shows, so I tried to condense it into a shorter flowering season for them, so I've got more blooms to choose from. So that's Rycroft Misty and Western Harry. There's 32 of each there. This is a mixed bed. It was meant to be a full bed of one called Twilight Boy, and I ended up with 17 Twilight Boy, and I topped it up with about 14 of Skelmersdale Jane. And I'm really pleased with this variety. There was talk, as I said before, of it being a ball dahlia, but it's a lovely deck. I mean, you know, look at that, Dave. That's what a miniature deck should be, isn't it? Mm. Look at it from underneath, right back on the stem, 2/3 deep, consistent colour, never fades, an attractive colour as well, isn't it? Violet, like a violet purple. And I've got it coming into flush, and I'll have it for the next 2 shows. I've got 5 plants round the corner and about 12 along here, so I'm really pleased with that. That's one of the new varieties, not on the market yet, will hopefully come on the market next year, raised by Gabby Hayes. It's called Twilight Boy, strong stems. It's another one of these, I can't really fault it. The only fault I found in it is when it gets really old like that with a small centre, it can drop its back, but it's got to be an old bloom to do that, so I wouldn't put that down as a fault. I would just put down that don't show really old blooms, because you're running into danger. The same as Marston Karen. People talk about Marston Karen dropping its back, only if it's an old bloom. Dave's fell in love with Skelmersdale Jane, but don't tell Steve Burns because it's named after his wife. And it's a miniature deck. I've grown it 9 up, the same as I did last year. Tall growing, much taller than Twilight Boy. In an ideal world, you wouldn't put Twilight Boy in the same bed as Skelmersdale Jane, but as I said before, this was meant to be a full bed of Twilight Boy, but I never got the numbers to do that, and I wish I had really, because it's such a lovely dahlia that I think that's going to be on my list for the next few years. And Skelmersdale Jane is a good dahlia in its own right. I did have quite a few blooms that you wouldn't say a 45-degree angle, and I've heard from other people that it has a tendency perhaps at times to do that, but not on the numbers that would be a problem. You just wouldn't use those blooms. But this is Skelmersdale Jane. It's a miniature deck. It's raised by Steve Burns in Skelmersdale and named after his wife. 9 blooms on the plant, but a tall grower. Wouldn't want to put it under covers as it'd be holding your covers up. My old favourite is Polventum Cristobal, and it's going to have another good year. Every bloom is okay, every plant is okay. I have had years with Cristobal when the plants are a bit rough and mottled and the blooms are the same, but I can't say that this year. This is the 3rd or 4th consecutive year when it's been great, and it's great again this year. And that is a success, and you can see the timing again, what we've tried to achieve with fully open blooms for last weekend, going through to coloured buds for David's show on the 10th of September, and that's my last show. There's only 3 shows, as I said, so I want all those blooms to come into that period, and it's not going to happen because blooms like that are not going to make it in what, a week's time, isn't it? Yeah. So you're looking for a week's time, you're looking at that sort of thing, you know, perhaps just colouring up, perhaps breaking bud like that, which I'll have because I've got every stage on all of them, which is what the timing is all about, not just to put it in the ground and let it grow.
Haven't talked about this.
What is it? Oh, Stella. Oh, wow. Blighton Stella. There aren't many dahlias where I haven't found a fault in them, and I've said this for 4 years now because I grew it. David Hall sent me 3 plants of Les Stothards, Blighton Stella, 4 years ago, and I grew 2 plants and I fell in love with it on that day, propagated 30 plants the following year, and have grown 30 plants ever since. The raiser thinks it should have gone in the bin at birth, but what does he know? That was his opinion when I said to him, "That's a good dahlia, Les." He said, "I thought it was rubbish." I said, "No, that's an ace," and it is an ace. It's another one of these like the one, that Twilight Boy. It's got the lot really. It's got the colour, it's got the centre, it's got the depth, it's got the angle. You can match it easily, and I've grown it 9 up. I've grown Twilight Boy 12 up. I've grown Polventum Cristobal 14 up because it will go oversized if you push it. I've grown Stella 9 up. Some people say they can't get size on it. Well, I've grown it 8 up, I've grown it 9 up, and there's no size problem for me. And I do nothing special with it. Feed it like the other dahlias. Strip it down pretty much. If you follow a stem of mine down, I mean, I would have gone 4 pair down, where people say 1 pair, 2 pair. I've gone 1, 2, 3, right down, right down. You would say 9 up stripped for me. Not me stripped, that's the plant. I only grow the one small deck, but it grows well here. It's called Winholm Diane, and I grow 56 plants, 2 beds of 28 in each, and 56 plants in all. And I had the Best Vase in Show at Essex on Sunday with it. I'd runner up to the Best Vase of Decks in Show last year at Wisley at the National Show. So it is my banker of bankers. You get varieties that just you know you can grow well, and there's not a lot of point in growing a lot of varieties unless you want to do multi-vase classes of that type. You just want to find varieties that really do well for you and grow a lot of them. Hence I've only got 22 varieties, yet I've got 560 plants for exhibition. So that's an average of 40 or something, 35 of each one. So that's what I do, and that's Winholm Diane 2 beds. The next one is a Maria Cord, which is a large semi-cactus, and I done well with it last year. I was pleased with it last year, but I am finding some are yellower than others, excuse me, yellower than others. For this is all of, you know, the same sort of plants all propagated together, and you get that sort of colour variance. And I would prefer them all to be one colour. I tried to pick the darker yellow because I remember this variety first coming onto the market many years ago from Pye Ensom, raised this from Worcester Park, Surrey, and it was that colour. It was never this colour. This is a sport. Somewhere along the way, this is a sport of it. This is a nice bloom, Dave. That's it. Mm-hmm. And it's a large semi-cactus. It's classified as a large semi-cactus, and you have to grow them in that section, of course, once they're classified. But somehow I think this primrosy colour has come into it because it was never that colour. And now, of course, there is a lighter cord which is even paler, more this colour. Lighter cord is the colour of cream moonlight, and this is cream moonlight, and that is the colour that your lighter cord should be, not the paler colour of an accord. And this is cream moonlight. Frankie Fraser was kind enough to let me have a bit of fresh stock of it this year, and I've grown it, and they've been quite good. I haven't got it as big as I'd like. That's a nice bloom, Dave. You can get down in. Go on the diet, boy.
Never found it so easy to get down your paths.
No, it's nice, isn't it? Nice to put the covers up, you know, more space really. And where we're working the cut flowers and taking blooms out together for shows and putting them in the buckets, it gives you a bit more space to work. You lose plants, that's the thing. This would be a bed of 3 rows and you get more plants in. But you can tend them easier, you can water them easier, you can feed them easier. So there's a, and as I was cutting down and am cutting down year by year now, it's natural progression. I'll be down at 25 plants next year. I can tell anyone. This is the White Vales Candy from Dave Rogerson up in Scotland, and good reliable variety. Can suffer a bit from virus. I've dug about 4 or 5 plants up because they were breaking down, so you have to be a bit careful with it. And we have got more, I've got more damping off than I've ever had. I don't normally suffer from that, but it has been so damp. And that bloom facially you could take to a flower show, yet that is really when the mist gets on them and then the sun beats down on the mist and it burns the back of the bloom out, which it's done with that one. And that is no good crime and a cry, because it's not even any good for a bunch of flowers. So that's a tragedy. These are the Mary's Germander. Goes tall for me, but lovely colour this year. It's going to have a good year. Mary's Germander. There's some nice blooms in here. I had a nice vase on Sunday at Essex, and it's going to have a really nice, and that's an ideal bloom, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe a little bit split petaled, and it can do this. This is nothing to do with insect damage or weather damage. It's just that this variety sometimes when it's hot can have these fishtails like a fin in places, and it's a fault, and you wouldn't use that bloom, and you can't pull those petals out because you're going to leave a gigantic hole in the bloom, so that would go in a bunch of flowers. And it's a nice shape, and it's a refined bloom as well. What you can get with these is this variance in colour. Can you see the light and dark shades as you look through the bloom? And it can do that, and it's a lot of the angle that you look at it as well. These are my Kenora Challenger, and where all these blooms that we showed last Sunday at the Essex show were formed in the heat when we had the 35 degrees, and we had several days, about 4 or 5 days on the trot of 35 degrees, and the blooms are very small. There wasn't a large bloom in there on Sunday that wouldn't go through a medium ring, so they were all undersized, but they're coming up to size now, and I've got a ring near me, but they're large. So the medium ring doesn't go over these now, and I will have hopefully for the next 2 shows I will have reasonable vases. But again, I did have a few that weren't all that healthy and I pulled them out, but the majority of them are fine. And I think I'll get 9.5-inch blooms by the time Abercorn comes along, I hope. So I've got a bed of that. That's started out at about 30 and is down to about 25 now. This is the new one from Phil Godsmark, which I didn't have in the new varieties because I knew I was growing it. They gave me a tuber of it and it propagated well. And it's called Rycroft Jill. He told me to grow a lot on it. I said, what's a lot? He said, well, I grew it 16 and he grows it for cut flower in a nursery. So believe it or not, I've grown it 20 up on each plant, and I've got 30 plants. So I've got 600 blooms running for me, and it's a good variety. It won, I used it in the Miniature Ball Championship with Dave's Choice and Mary's Jemanda on Sunday, 10 entries, and won it. And it's a sweet thing. And I'm starting to think to myself, if you've got to go at 20 up to keep it down as a nice miniature like that, what would it do at 8 up as a small ball? So I should have grown a few as a small ball in hindsight, and some as a miniature ball. But you can get some bloom off it, and I haven't stripped it down. Look at the cabbage that's on it. Look at the growth and 2nd and 3rd flushes. Carmen's going to be in 7th heaven when she sees what she's going to get out of this variety as a cut flower variety. I mean, you've got a 2nd flush on its way. Look at that, that's a side shoot.
Yeah.
And a bud in it.
Every flower seems to be pretty consistent, doesn't it? There's no serious fault or anything appearing in them.
No, I haven't seen it. I think you have to wait a little while for the centre to get to the stage you're looking at, and then you've got this globular. Can you get round and take the back? I'll twist it round without twisting its head off. See how it's closing up now. But if you show it, you wouldn't show it like that. But if you showed it like that, well, even that one's closed. But sometimes, there was a couple of blooms I had on Sunday and you could get your finger up the back, and they don't like that with a ball dahlia, do they? But it's a natural closer, isn't it? You know. But that's the centre, he reckons, that ought to be shown on it. No, just a pin, you know, just a small 1p coin centre. Yeah. But you could show it, and I had some were a bit younger than that, you know. But in the future I should wait for it. And you need to cover it. The reason you cover this is not because of the weather, it's for the sun. We live in the hottest county in the UK, and we do get bleaching. We do get the blooms that will fade, and that is our biggest problem, living in 35 degrees of sun. The beauty of it this year is, unlike last year, the sun came at flowering time. This year it's come earlier, thank God. But if you see this, Dave, the size of this bloom here, and then look at the side shoot on it, you know, it wouldn't be hard to get that bloom a bit bigger, would it?
No, as you say, sort of 8 to even 10 up, probably.
I think about 10 up, yeah. If you wanted it as a small ball, but isn't it better as a 20 up miniature? You know, what's the matter with that?
Get a lot of vases out of a few plants.
Yeah, we will do. You send me blind trying to sort them out next week. One of my favourites again, Marston Karen. I've used it in the last 2 winning Don Braun exhibits, and it's always been a good one for me. The secret of it is don't get too old a bloom. I wouldn't be cutting that for a show, because you might have the back go, you're getting a bit of fading. I would cut it a bit younger, so that or something slightly younger than that goes on the bench. Because when Frankie Fraser come down a few years ago, he was travelling for 2 days from Scotland, and you know, they fell apart. But with all the joggling of the vehicle and perhaps cutting, you know, blooms like that, they wouldn't last the test of time. That's the problem. But it's always been a good variety. Again, I don't cover many miniatures. I've got to have a reason to cover a miniature, and the reason with this is, remembering the covers have only been on a few days, you do get a bit of bleaching where we live. Wouldn't be a problem for the northern growers, but it is for us. So I've got a bed of that, probably 30 in each bed of these. Where there's one variety to a bed, it's 15 in a row, so you've got roughly 30 in each bed. I only grow the one small semi-cactus, which is Oakwood Goldcrest, and this is Oakwood Goldcrest, 2 beds of it, and it does well down here, and we can't grow the kiwis very well. If I could grow a kiwi, I'd still make that the #1, but Oakwood Goldcrest, Sherwood Goldcrest, and the new one, Lemon Crest, is very good. They're all good, that family. There's 2 beds of that one. We're going on now to Blighton Will Scarlet. It's a shorter plant this year. It was a 5-foot plant for me last year, and I got bigger blooms last year. So I don't know if it's the bed that they're in, because this bed, I used a product called Remin last year, which is a volcanic ash, which is supposed to help them and give them colour and whatnot. But the Primrose Diane that I grew in the bed were poor, and these are not as good as what they were last year, and I don't think it's the variety. I think it's a good variety which will grow taller and have bigger blooms, but I thought the Remin would have been washed out over the winter, but I'm not sure it has. One of my favourite dahlias, and I haven't grown it last year, but I had it back again this year. It's named after me. It's called Dave's Choice. I was on Phil Godsmark's nursery one day, and he was showing me all the new varieties, and he had one plant of this, and I said, I like that. He said, I only got the one. I said, oh, don't worry. I said, when you get more stock, I said, I'll have some. He said, no, I'll cut the tuber in half, we'll have half each. So he did that, and then when it turned out to be a good variety, and I started winning with it, and he was pleased. And you done well with this. You grew this well, didn't you? Used it in your Terry Clark one year, didn't you? Come last, but no, you won it.
Down again.
Sorry about that. But when you see it like that, you know, and like that, and it can be grown in the open because it does not mark. No. The problem people have with it is putting a stem on it. How do I get a stem on it? Not by luck, by putting dry soluble potash, a big handful around each plant at the end of July, and then watering it in. So, you know, that is a good stem for a Dave's Choice, isn't it? You know, you see them, people in their gardens leaning over and all that, but I work for the stem. 9 up on every plant. There's a planting of about 36 there, 18 in each of these small beds, and it's still a good dahlia. I haven't grown this for a few years. It's not new. It's called Marston George, one of my smaller plantings, probably 22 in there. But the time in the game with all of them, if you've seen, you've got every stage you would want for the shows that I'm going to do. And I'll show you how I achieve that later. It's not pot luck. You don't just chuck them in the ground and stop them. You work to get them like they are there. As you do look down the plot, every variety is in flower, with flower to come. And it's a lot of effort and know-how a bit in trying to achieve that. But this is Marston George, and it's still a good miniature deck. What I did find on Sunday is the centres come and go rather quickly. So a bloom like that wouldn't last till the weekend. That wouldn't last probably till tomorrow. And they thin out very quickly. So you've got to be careful with a variety like that in what you take to the flower show, so that they do last. I grew Normandy Delight before it ever came on the market as a trials variety, and it's always been a great dahlia, but for some reason this year it's got green centres. It's got green centres and I can't get rid of them. And what have I done to try and get rid of them? I've given them lawn feed. I've given them 3 applications of Miracle Grow lawn feed, which helps to get centres out, green centres out of them. but it hasn't worked on this one yet, and the same applies to the Red Ace, Blighton Red Ace, which you'll see in a minute, to try and help the centres. But a bit disappointed in that, because the way things are going, the only place they're going to go in Carmen's Bunches, because unfortunately they're holding their green centres to the bitter end until they're dying underneath. Like a bloom like that, it's about to die underneath, and it's got a wodge in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a judge will pan you heavily for a green centre, so you have to be careful with that. And this is my own pond, my own spalt. I had a bed of Mayer's Ronda in here last year. Stuart Kennedy raised Mayer's Ronda. I had a bed of it, and I had 2 stems come up, this colour, pink, and we secured it, and my friend Paul Schramm grew it under his lights and his mist through the winter, and we managed to get a bed of 20 plants, 19 plants of it, and it's quite an attractive pom, isn't it?
Yeah.
But with the poms, I just double stop the plants or treble stop the plants, and then I let them flower about a week before the flower shows, and you try and get as much flower on a pom as you can to give you a choice and to keep the size down from being disqualified. I carry a ring, the old ring, which is a 52mm ring. The new one is 55, and I just check that I'm okay, and that would be okay. And I've got 3mm to add to that, so the new ring is 55, these are 52, so they would be about the nice size. They might put on a bit in water, but they would be fine. So that's my new pom, which is Pink Mayer's Ronda. Pink Mayer's Ronda. I always believe in putting the parent. I think when you get a spalt of a variety, you should include the parent's name. So this came from Mayer's Ronda, so it's going to be Pink Mayer's Ronda. But no disrespect to anyone, but to call a variety Louis White, and it's a spalt from Bryn Trefell, or Aggie White, and Aggie White's a spring from Bryn Trefell, I think the name of the parent should be included. Colette V is a spalt from Hollywood Twilight. There should be part of the parent's name in there, in my view. I can't see the sense really. You're not giving the raiser of the original variety. You're lucky enough to get the spalt. I'm lucky enough to get the spalt, and Stuart Cleansey was lucky enough to get the spalt. But it should go back like he's done, Mayer's Ronda, because they all descend back from the original variety, which is Ronda. So I would call this Pink Mayer's Ronda. Just my thought. Last one of the exhibition beds is Red Ace, Blighton Red Ace from Les Stothard. It's a really nice red miniature ball. I do have a bit of a centre problem with it again, just closing the centres up. And it's had 4 applications of Miracle Grow lawn feed, and they are starting to close a bit. But I noticed it won the seedling class at Harrogate last year. It came second in the Leeds trial. So they must have been closed up for the people up north. It might just be a southern thing, I don't know, but I'm doing my best because I think it is an excellent variety. See the way it goes back, Dave? Right back to the stem, nice small petal, and good variety, isn't it?
It's just the centre.
Just the centre, yeah, just the centre.
Mostly like the blooms we're going to there, fine.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. Right, so we cut that. This is what I think is the finest garden dahlia of them all. We've tried many over the years, but she won't let this one go. It's called Formby Art. It's a lovely bicolour. You can show it, but it's best as a cut flower. It just gets blooming. I reckon she's cut 60 blooms off these plants, this little group of plants so far, and it's unstoppable really. It's got a stem like iron, which you want with a cut flower. It's a colourful bloom. It's a clean bloom, it's a show bloom really, and yeah, that's the #1 of her cut flower varieties. Excellent variety. It's a bicolour. It came from George Harding in Australia, and it's called Formby Art, small decorative. This is one that was given to me by my friend Andrew Aspinall. It's called Crazy Love, and they do a lot of that down at Ramsgate-on-Sea in Kent. And it's a cut flower dahlia. It's a garden out of the bag sort of nursery dahlia. I'm not sure it's got the sort of quality that we're used to in our cut flowers, but there's a lot of bloom to come, and it'll go in a bunch. We normally put 6 in a bunch, and I might put that in as a freebie. And this is Caroline's Beauty from Phil Godsmark. He came into the Sussex show last year with this variety, and it's a really lovely water lily in bright pink. It's called Caroline's Beauty, and it's raised by Phil Godsmark. And this is what I mean by the disbudding. For you that have never shown and want to improve the blooms, this is disbudding, where you've got the centre bud, you've got side buds, side shoots. You remove them like that down the stem to improve the quality and size and stem of the original bloom in the middle. And you're trying to create a stem on a bloom like that, because if you've ever made a bunch of flowers up, and I have, if they're rubbery and they go all over the place, it's a nightmare. A bloom like that would be perfect for bunches because of the strength of the stem, as is Formby Art.
Got a nice colour in the base, and
lovely colour. You can't leave it too long because it will lose colour in the back. So you're bunching it, unbunching it on the outside for show work. We're going to go. So to try and create a flush of bloom like we've got across the plot is not luck. It's not just putting a plant in the ground, nipping the top out and letting it flower. Okay, if you just want bright colours and cut flowers in your garden, that's what you do. You get a plant or a tuber, you put it in the ground, you nip the growing tip out, you let the side shoots come up, and then you stop it one more time. You try and get the blooms into flower as early and as quickly as you can. You disbud them 2 pairs down to have a good stem and a good bloom, and then they will flower right through the summer. And you will start in July and you will finish in the south of England in early November, up north perhaps late October. And I'm just going to go through an average variety for me. This is Blyton Red Ace, which you saw just now, and we're going to look at it again. And how do you create blooms that are out for the show last Sunday and next Saturday, and then the later shows that come after that, is you do it by manipulation. And what you do is, I start off, and I'm going to read from my sheet here. Blyton Red Ace, I've got 20 plants. I'm going to grow them 9 up, which I have, come to 180 blooms. So we're going to have 880 blooms through the season on a first flush on that variety. So then I'll write down a target figure. And being it's a short season, I've got 4 targets. First take 40 buds, second take 40 buds, third bake 50, and the last take 50. So that's 180 buds that I want to take. You can't just manufacture them. You can't. They can't just come. You've got to make sure and try and get them when you want them. So what actually happened when I started disbudding, the first disbud, which are these blooms that are fully open now, I took 46 buds. Then I took 29 buds. Then I secured 46 buds, and then I secured 58 buds. And that gave me the 180 blooms that are running there. And you're trying to do it every 5 days. So I would disbud 25 days before the Essex show. I would have taken, where is it now? I would have taken 46 buds, and they would have gone to Essex, and some are here today. And then 5 days later, which would be around the Kent show, Darren Everest show, and then the 46 the same, and the last take, 58, would probably be for the Abercorn virus show at the end of the season. And what you're doing is to hold them back. Is you don't just take them in a normal way. You would do them on a knockback to hold them back for that date. So most of these have had their stems worked on to create a later blooming, as you can see. Yeah. Have we got any with a knockback one? I can't see it on there. Maybe I didn't do
that
it.
One?
Yeah. So But to try and get the flash that you want, so any buds that appear before the date, which was the 5th of August, the 5th of August I started this budding. Any buds that were there before that date would have been nipped out, and I would have run it down to hold it back, so that you're trying to create that flush that will take you to all the shows. And it is manufacturing it by achieving it on a long-term basis. You don't want all the buds to come at one time. You don't want any blooms before your first show. You preferably don't want any blooms after your last show. You want them all encapsulated in that 3-week period. That the 20 days disbudding that I did on the 5th, the 10th, the 15th, and then again on the 20th, so I disbudded for 20 days, taking those number of buds which I said before, which was 46, 29, 46 and 58. They were taken over 20 days, and that would be the last take. This sort of buds are probably going to be too late for the Abercorn Nursery show, but there's no way I can't have any bloom or vases of flowers, and this is my smallest planting, 20 plants, 9 up. But every set of plants that we've got here, we go back to a couple of them, but you can't really miss, because you've got that flash of bud from a fully open bloom going to buds that aren't even coloured yet. And it's all done by a timing mechanism of knowing how it's done. And people say, what do you do? And there's nothing I won't do. I do a double stop, I do a single stop, I do a treble stop, I do a knockback. Not because I want to, because it's the best thing to get that bud on that stem on that day that I want. So I will do stuff like that. The knockback on this one, it come right down there, Dave, was early on. I took it down there because it needed it then. Up it came, and I managed to flower it on its crown bud. Other times I'll go to a wing bud. Other times I'll come off a side shoot up there. If the plant is really early, I'll give it the plants a second stop. So they'll be stopped initially, then they'll be stopped again, and if they're still early, I'll give them a third stop. I'll knock buds back to try and achieve it. But what you're trying to aim is for your whole plot, 22 varieties, and you can go out today and cut blooms off of each of those varieties. That's the ultimate aim that you should try and achieve if you're a showman. If you're not a showman, just start and flower them as soon as you can and keep going as long as you can. Water them, feed them, spray them, and that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the talk anyway. Thanks very much. Bye bye.